This Terminator music. All right, what is up, everybody? Oh, it's Monday night. It's another roundtable time here on the Living Force. We're talking Out of the Shadows. We're talking Justina Ireland. We're talking High Republic. But before we're talking, Wes is pushing it, punching it, do it. Welcome to the Living Force, a Youtini Network podcast production. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight to talk all about the not anymore latest addition to the High Republic, because things come out every week now, is the full cast of characters on this show once more. We are now reunited with Dr. Corey Helton.
Hello,
hey man,
hello.
welcome back.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good to be here on another Monday night. Eric and I were talking before the show, saying it feels like it has been ages since all of us have been together. I missed you guys, man.
I missed you. My weeks are empty and my heart is sad, but it gets a little happier now that Dr. Charles Hankel is back, nice and sleep deprived as always.
Hello. Yes, I am sleep deprived. Happy Monday. Happy Labor Day. Happy Out of the Shadows Day. That sounds much more cool and ominous. Let's go with that.
That does sound really cool and ominous, but it couldn't hope to ever be cooler than the ice-cold, awesome realness that is Wes Jenkins, making up the fourth member of our crew.
Welcome, everyone. Happy Labor Day.
Yeah.
Happy Labor Day to everybody who celebrates Labor Day, because it's a great day to not go to work.
It absolutely is.
What even
no
is
labor
Labor
at
Day?
all.
I don't even understand what this holiday is.
It's a celebration of like the unions, especially like the implementation of like labor unions and people fighting for workers' rights.
Early union.
Yeah,
That
if you're
sounds
listening
good.
to this, it is. If you're listening to this podcast, here's a healthy reminder: use your PTO. You don't owe your company every second of your life. Use your time
What's
off.
PTO?
Paid time off. Oh yeah, you're a
Oh,
doctor.
yeah.
Never mind. That's
Sorry.
what regular jobs give
Parent-
people for
that's
vacation.
no.
Now enjoy your alcohol.
Charles, you ever heard of
That's
that?
right.
I'm not sure what this PTO business is.
I don't even know what TO is, let alone PTO.
That's Terrell Owens. Hello to everyone in the chat as well, including Michael, who says he's wearing the same shirt as me. For those of you on video, this is my new Star Wars Vision shirt I got on the old
shirt.
Amazon. This features the Ronin and the Hat Droid. There he is from the dual short that is also going to be featured in the upcoming novel Star Wars Visions Ronin, which myself and a good amount of people online just got a review copies of this week. We cannot say anything about it until the end of the month, but I will say I'm very excited for the review to be written. Yeah, that's all I can say. Pre-orders are up now. Get that book. Before we get into the roundtable, though, because this is a one-part roundtable tonight, we're going to do the whole thing. Corey, you had to leave in the middle of last week's show out of nowhere. This has never happened before. So we just wanted to give you a second to tell the listeners if you're okay, to kind of say what's going on, because it was pretty abrupt. We just wanted to like, clear the air.
Well, I'm not okay, but you know, this is just the
Generally,
baseline.
sure.
You know, generally, yeah. So that pretty unprecedented. This never happened before. That one of us have had to
Nope.
leave in the middle of a live show. 128 episodes. We've never had to do that before. Pretty wild that it happened. Long story short, my wife got crazy sick. So sick she didn't feel like she could drive home safely. So I had to abruptly leave in the middle of the show and go pick her up, and she's doing much better now. She's good. We had a bit of a COVID scare. We thought she might have had COVID. She had some pretty severe GI symptoms, and but we did get her tested, and she was negative, so that's good. Everything is good now. Caitlin's good. I'm good. Hopefully we won't have to do it again. But I do have to say...
We're all fine here now.
Yeah, that's right. We're all fine here now. Fantastic work, you guys. Wes and Eric. Like
Thanks, man.
I can't believe that it worked out as well as it did. Like, just so you know, some tech transparency, the stream was all still operating from my computer that Wes was controlling remotely. And it worked, and it stayed up, and I wasn't even here in front of my computer, which is a huge risk, and it worked out well. So you guys had a good episode. And
It was really good. It's also good to know that you two are not the two in the friend group who aren't actually friends when you're alone. You know how in every big group of friends, there's two people that just happen to be friends with everyone else, but they're not friends? It's not.
Oh my God,
you
yes.
two. That means it's maybe involving me and Corey.
I was going to
don't
say,
know.
is it the two of us?
Is it us?
I don't know.
It's like when you show,
we have been in the same city, and you weren't interested in coming to visit me. So, I
That
mean,
is true.
Oh
That
my
says a
God!
lot.
See, it's coming
That
out
says a
now.
lot.
Yeah, it's that moment where everyone cancels brunch except for two people, and you're like, "Are we staying? Or do we like?" But no, I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad the show was still a blast. Was also still like, I guess, a blast is a weird thing for last week's show. It was a little more of an emotional show, but we got a lot of good feedback from it. I'm glad it helped a lot of you out with what you're going through, and we love you. So we're glad to be back with a full squadron this week. A couple of reminders before we get into the main meat of the show. Tomorrow is September 7th as of recording. We got a lot of releases coming up we're going to talk about later on in the show. But the main release we want to highlight on this show is the Life Day Treasury from George Mann and Kevin Scott and artist Grant Griffin. It will be coming out tomorrow. It is continuing the trajectory of the Myths and Fables and Dark Legends books that are a bunch of short stories in the Star Wars universe in like the Myths, Legends era kind of thing. Written by George Mann and Kevin Scott together. And if you've been following their friendship online, you know how close they are. My written review as well as a video review by our very own Caroline will be going up tomorrow on our YouTube channel. So stay tuned to Youtini to hear what we thought of it. A little preview. I thought it was really lovely, and I had no idea how bad I needed a holiday book in the middle of September. So, if you go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if you guys know this. We had a very interesting discussion with our database and timeline team this week about this book. Because it's one of those weird Legends books. I mean, like one of those weird canon books that's technically canon because it's, in modern Star Wars, but also like not really like truly canon. Like the timeline placement is really challenging. And this whole category that this entire kind of book, all these George Mann books, these legend kind of ish myths books, like following is quickly becoming like kind of its own category in Star Wars storytelling. We specifically had this whole conversation because Ronin is also very difficult to place on the timeline. Like it has some challenging because it's this weird Legends canon thing, right? And it's kind of interesting to see that we're getting this sort of weird category of books that like doesn't actually belong on the timeline anywhere in Star Wars storytelling. So it's pretty cool.
It's fun because it is kind of creating legends, canon, and then canon myth. Because like from the beginning of this series, George Mann has always said he's writing these tales basically thinking these are the tales that get told in universe to people and children in the Star Wars galaxy. So they continue that with this book, and especially I wrote this in my review. If you are someone who wasn't able to see family or friends or loved ones during the last year because of COVID over the holidays, and you've been missing that, this is kind of exactly the book you need. It reminds you what the holidays bring that a lot of us kind of didn't get, and hopefully, knock on everything, and get your vaccines, we'll be able to, be re-upped this next holiday season. So that comes out tomorrow. Pre-orders available at youtini.com right now. All right, our Patreon community, we love you. We hope you're doing well. We want to thank a couple new patrons. We had Gavin McFadden was a new monthly patron this week, and Cohen Vandeven upgraded to an annual patron from a weekly patron.
Right.
Again, if you become an annual patron, not only does it help us kind of plan our year monetarily as what we can put on the site, it also like saves you a bunch of money, and you get a couple months of content for free. So we thank everyone that's done that, including everyone that has allowed us to meet our next community goal. We are meeting about that very soon to find a date to watch Rogue One together. Obviously, with all these releases, it's been very hectic at the Youtini quote-unquote offices, but we are going to be meeting to find a time to watch that with you. And of course, every single week, we get closer and closer to that Attack of the Clones commentary, which I know just gives Corey an excuse to watch Attack of the Clones with all of us.
I am so excited to watch Attack of the Clones with you guys because I watched this movie. I think Revenge of the Sith is my favorite prequel, but Attack of the Clones I watched the most, weirdly. So like,
sure,
I watched it over and over again, and there's so many things to talk about in that.
There really are.
Things that's wrong with Star Wars, things that like really bad dialogue that is so fun to make fun of and quote. And oh my god, I can't wait for that. That's gonna be fun.
It's going to be a blast. So stay tuned, of course. Every week, we'll bring you updates on our Patreon community to let you know how close we are. And though we do not have a Patron of the Week this week, we do want to give a quick shout out to our very own Magda Life, a very active member of our community who is having a birthday. So happy birthday, week time. We hope you choose to spend a little bit of it in the Discord with us because we love hanging out with you. All right, no weekly roundup this week because we're doing a roundtable, but I did want to remind you all, as we said, about the new releases coming out. If you need some more Star Wars book on your shelf, tomorrow you get the Life Day Treasury. In the comics world, you get the High Republic Edge of Balance, the first ever manga in canon for the High Republic that comes out tomorrow, as well as the next 4 books in the Essential Legends collection, Dark Force Rising, Rule of Two, Rogue Squadron, and The Last Command. And of course, you can go over to our new releases page to see everything that's coming out. Make sure you get those pre-orders in. I just pre-ordered those Legends Essentials today myself. So they'll be showing up tomorrow on the porch. So can't wait to add all of those. There's so much Star Wars coming out. I can't wait. Whew. All right. The fastest intro we've done maybe ever. Because you know what, y'all? This is a one-part roundtable day. Let us take the earliest break in the history of the show. And when we come back, it's all Charles all the time to talk about Justina Ireland's Out of the Shadows. Be right back.
Darth Vader lightsaber lamp, and I just like... I just knocked over everything in my office so I could get this into the camera shot. I knocked one of the posters off the wall.
Anderson cover. I have heard the Anderson cover described by some friends of mine as one of their least favorite Legends covers, and I don't totally know why. Maybe it's just because Depa Billaba has this dead stare in the background.
You know what it is?
Emma, what is your art of the week this week?
Yeah, so I don't have anything as dark and depressing as that corpse, but
All right, everyone. As a reminder, if you're on audio, we want to see you in all the Youtini Network live shows that are every single week. The Cosmic Force is on Wednesday evenings. And starting next week, Legends Look Back is back from hiatus. They'll be reinstating their live show. So excited to get that back so you can have 3 guaranteed live shows a week and some Youtini game nights every now and then on Fridays. Of course, more news on that to come. Wes has been doing all kinds of stuff behind the scenes, and whenever Wes gets up to something, you know it's going to be very mischievous, but also very high quality. On that, though, Charles, I missed you so dearly last week. I decided to give you a whole show this week to drive the bus, so it's all you, buddy. Let's talk about Out of the Shadows.
Let's talk about Out of the Shadows. It is time for the roundtable, but I have one very serious question for those of you that listen to the roundtable before I begin this plot synopsis. Is it the Barang sector or the Barangi sector?
I think it's Barang.
I think it said Barang in the audiobook. I'm pretty sure.
That's what we're going to go with.
I heard
plot
Baron.
synopsis time. Ready, go. Sylvester Yarrow and the crew of the Switchback have been struggling ever since the Bind Guild was disbanded and Chansey, Sylvester's mother, was killed by the Nile. Their bad luck continues when their ship is suddenly pulled from hyperspace in the Barang sector and attacked by Nile yet again, forcing them to abandon ship. Vernestra Rowe and Padawan Imri Kintaros have spent their time since the attack on Valo aboard Starlight Beacon, rubbing elbows with the likes of Avar Kriss, but Stellan Gios recalls them to Coruscant for a new mission. Lorna D is touting a new weapon called the Gravity's Heart, but it's not yet finished. She convinces Markian Rowe to let her borrow his oracle, Marie Santeca, to hurry along its completion. Rowe tasks Nan with guarding Santeca until she is safely returned. On the way to Coruscant, Vern and Imri are called to assist an outpost on TK under attack by Nile. En route, Vern suffers a force vision in hyperspace, something that hasn't happened to her in a long time. After chasing off the Nile and saving the outpost, Vern's vision leads her to the discovery of a puzzle box that she believes the Nile were after. While at the outpost, the Jedi meet Jordana Sparkburn, a Santeca who serves as a deputy and who also happens to be Sylvester's ex-girlfriend. Jordana decides to go to Coruscant to report the attack to her superiors. On Coruscant, Silvestri can't seem to find anyone who seems to care about what happened to her in the Bereng sector until Xylan Graf of the well-known hyperspace prospecting Graf family approaches her. His ships have been disappearing, and he thinks Syl's experience is the key to solving the mystery. Though Syl doesn't trust Graf, his exorbitant wealth convinces her to work with him for a while. Graf introduces Syl to Professor Wolk, a Gungan who claims to have been one of Chancey Yara's old teachers. Wolk further reveals that Syl may not have known her mother as well as she thought she did. Using old hollows of Chancey, Wolk reveals a suspicion that Chancey Yara is still alive and may even be helping the Nile build a super weapon that explains what is happening in the Bereng sector. However, shortly after this conversation, Wolk is murdered by a Nile agent. Graf convinces the Republic to sign off on a mission for a team to explore the Bereng sector. He hopes to not only discover what's going on, but also to prove that no super weapon is there, so the Graf family can obtain the lease to that area of space for their own hyperspace experiments. He's to be accompanied by Vernestra and Imri at the request of Stellan Gios, as well as Reith Silas and Comac Vitus. Silvestri and Jordana also go along as additional witnesses. On their way, Silvestri discovers their ship isn't headed to the Bereng sector at all, but rather to the Graf family compound called Everbloom. When she confronts Graf about this, he smooth talks his way out of the situation. Vern has yet another hyperspace vision, urging her to find someone and obtain something, but she doesn't know exactly what, nor does she recognize where she was in her vision. Eric,
all right,
take it away.
Let's do it. After arriving at Everbloom, the Nile immediately attack and capture everyone. Jordana, Vern, and Comac are left behind at the Graf compound, while Silvestri, Imri, and Reith are taken by Chancey to the Gravity's Heart. Silvestri comes face to face with her mother, who is actually alive and working with the Nile, just as Professor Woke suspected. Chancey tries to convince Syl to join her, but Syl refuses. Catriona Graf, matriarch of the Graf family, denies any direct involvement with the Nile and tries to win over the Jedi by using her knowledge of ancient hyperspace prospectors' signs to open the puzzle box Vern found. Inside is an old hollow of Marie Santeca and a set of coordinates. The Jedi and Jordana decide to travel to the coordinates in hopes of finding the rest of their kidnapped crew. Upon their arrival, they instead find a monstrous cobbled-together space station, the Gravity's Heart. While Vern and Jordana race to board the station, Comac calls in reinforcements from nearby Jedi temples. The girls manage to find Syl, Imri, and Reith, but not before Jordana uses a special weapon to massacre a room full of Nile. Despite Vern's distress at what she witnessed, she feels called to a certain room in the space station. Once there, she discovers Marie Santeca in her medical pod. The woman is rapidly approaching death, but was holding out for Vern. The two share a mental connection, and Marie gives Vern the coordinates for one last path leading to an unknown location. The Jedi arrive, and the Gravity's Heart is destroyed, but not before the heroes are able to escape. On their way out, they briefly encounter Chancey Yara again, who also escapes aboard the Switchback. The Jedi return to Coruscant and report back to the Council, but Vern can't quite bring herself to tell them about the hyperspace coordinates she received, nor about her worsening hyperspace visions. Her secrets remain with her for now. Despite the Graf family's fall from grace, Xylan fulfills his promise to Syl by gifting her a new ship. Jordana decides to join Syl as a crew member and, more importantly, as her girlfriend once again. They get a tip from Xylan to go to Takodana to seek out business from none other than Maz Kanata. With Marie Santeca dead, Nan is unsure if she can return to Marchion Ro. The Grafs convince her to become an informant for them. The Grafs also reveal that they have built a brand new state-of-the-art laboratory for Chancey Yara to continue her hyperspace experiments, and by using information they were able to obtain from studying Marie Santeca, they hope to build a new, more powerful gravity well projector.
Dum, dum, dum.
Right.
That's what happened in Out of the Shadows. Should we all try to harmonize?
Directed by George Lucas. Yes.
All right.
This has been a Penguin Random House audio production.
Rather than become a quartet of some kind, let's just rate the book on a
barbershop is the word you were looking for there, Charles.
Yes,
barbershop.
Barbershop quartet. Let's rate the book on a 1 to 10, and y'all can give me brief reasons as to why you feel that way. Wesley, I'd like to hear from you first.
Wesley? Okay. So my score will be a 6.9. Right below good, but kind of hovering in the mediocre area.
Okay.
I will not give my reasons yet, because that's what this round table is about. So you need
those
to
cards close to the chest. All right.
Listen, I will give my reasons, and I'm going to give this book a 6.8 as well. And a couple small points I'll bring up. Of course, we're gonna bring this up a lot. We're gonna discuss a lot of things in this roundtable. But my number one complaint about this book is the audiobook production.
That's what I've heard.
Something weird, guys. Something weird. My first truly negative experience with an audiobook. Very strange. They cut a lot of corners with this audiobook. There's not very many sound effects. The narrator,
no sound effects.
Yes,
Corey.
that's right. That's right. There's no sound effects. It's not like the usual high quality Star Wars music and sound effects. It's not that. It's basically just a narrator. Yeah.
There's no blaster fire in the back of fights.
Nothing.
At all.
None of that stuff. Which we're like accustomed to at this point, right?
Yeah, we're spoiled, but also like that's what we expect.
That was probably a whiplash going from that to Tempest Runner.
It was a huge whiplash. Yeah, like the narrator, I don't really know anything about her. Like I've never heard her narrate anything else before. She mispronounced a lot of stuff. Like
heard that.
She at the very end of the book, she calls Maz multiple times, and it drove me nuts. I was like,
Maz Canada.
I mean, yeah,
she's over there on Fifth.
It's one thing to like change the pronunciation from what like the writer says it was. A good example is Marcion versus Marcion Rowe. Like,
it's totally Marcion.
I mean, even Tempest Runner says Marcion. Also, I noticed that. Actually, but anyway,
they're doing that now.
Anyway, she says Maz Canada. I'm like, there's no excuse for that.
It shouldn't take away from your score of the content of the book.
All right. So let's get into that. Let's get into that briefly. I will say it felt like I'm sorry. It felt like nothing. Are we going to talk about the audiobook again? I don't think we are. Like this is it,
Probably
right?
not.
So like anyway,
Probably
that was there has been some criticism of the audiobook production online, and I think some of that is valid. The other thing I'll say about the audiobook is the editing is bad. Like they end a chapter. It's like somebody was looking at the audacity of the audio, right? They were looking at the audio like waveform or whatever, and they clipped it at the very end as soon as somebody stopped talking, and then started the next one. So it would be like, and then everyone died. Chapter 2. Listen, it was like, what the hell? It's like seriously, there would be a dramatic pause, then everybody died. Chapter 2. Like it was like so split second. It was like, what the hell is this? It was ridiculous. So
oh my gosh.
Anyway, the audio production was bad. It's the first bad audio production I've ever seen.
All the reviews on Audible say the exact same thing as you're saying, and they're all like, I love Star Wars audiobooks. What's going on? I love these. This has no idea. Like they're all 1-star performance, 1-star performance, 1-star performance.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe we can.
No
maybe
wild.
maybe it's a COVID thing, right? This was an audiobook that was produced during COVID. Maybe the narrator did a lot of it at home, but audio editing and stuff is
disappointing.
That can be done remotely. I mean, it was
They
very
did all of
disappointing.
Dr. Aphra remotely, the audio drama.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was disappointing. It really was.
it's a bummer.
The audiobooks that we listened to in the past, they have sound effects and they have background music and we are spoiled to death by Mark Thompson and his great voices. So that's kind of it's kind of up on a tier that we can't really get to unless we get that specialized audio drama stuff that we've listened to in the past. So if you don't have those sound effects in the background, then you're probably gonna get bad reviews on it now.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, even the new Legends books that they're releasing are getting that treatment.
Great.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't really feel like there's a good excuse for this.
I agree.
Okay.
It sounds like something's going on that we probably didn't know about.
All right, so forget about the audiobook production. My rating for the book, I know that was a long tangent to go on, but I think it was necessary. So the book itself, it felt like nothing happened to the last 30 pages. to be totally frank, like it felt like the book just dragged on and on and on and on, and then we got to the last 30 pages, and all of these huge stakes for the High Republic, like enormous stakes for the High Republic, all happen in the last like 2 chapters of the book, and it was kind of crazy to me. I also feel a little weird about so much kind of hugely important stuff happening in a young adult book that was like this weird place between like it was technical enough in places to be an adult novel, but also like everybody has a crush on each other, so it's obviously a young adult novel. Like I don't know, it was this weird balance of stuff, and I don't know, it had some had some problems. I can see this like on an outline. Like everybody's like all the authors are in the room and they're like the bullet points of what stuff's happening in whose book, and like this one's Justina Ireland's book, this one's Claudia Gray's book, and like all of these crazy big points ended up in this book, maybe because they didn't know where else to put them. It feels like kind of. So, you know, it had some problems. You know, I did enjoy the big picture stuff that happened. I think we can look back on it fondly. And, you know, maybe me listening to the audiobook had somewhat of a negative effect on my score as well. I mean, it's pretty hard to deny that.
All right, note to self: never ask Corey to do anything briefly again. Eric, how would you rate this book?
So this one, as a lot of folks know, whenever I read these, I do them super early to get the review in, and I did not re-listen to this one on audiobook. Actually, so I mean, hey, maybe good for me on this one. So I went back to my notes actually from when I did it, and based on my earlier notes, my score reading back is an 8.4, which. Much lower than some of the more recent High Republic entries for me. But briefly, as best as I can find the word, I agree. I think that it was a slower book. The last 100 pages or so really gripped me. But I really liked the writing of the characters themselves. I like Justina's writing, but I do think that on the grander scale, this is not one of the plots that'll really stick with me, or honestly has stuck with me a ton. As we were reading that synopsis, I was remembering a lot of stuff. I like the vibes of a lot of the scenes, and I think this is going to be one that we look back and be like, oh, that's right, that started in Tempest Runner, and I love it in this book because blank blank. You know, I think like the Graff family stuff. I think that like the Marie Santeca the fallout of this book, I think is going to be really interesting.
Maz Kanata being brought in,
having being brought in is cool. But yeah, so 8.4 for me.
You know, that's a really good point too. Actually, you brought up about Justina Ireland's writing style. Actually, is very, very good. Like, you know, we at Youtini we score everything based on like certain categories and stuff, and like writing style is kind of one of them. And I'm a big fan of Justina Ireland's writing in general. Like, I think like the way she flows, the length of her chapters, all that stuff is very easy to get into, and like I have nothing negative to say about the author at all.
Yeah, very accessible writing. It's just sometimes the content, especially in this one, could have maybe drawn us in a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's an interesting point with this being a committee effort, right? Or a full team effort, is you're not really entirely in control of everything you can put in your story. Like this book probably would have been different if just Justina Ireland was writing it, right? There are other powers that be. I'm more in line score-wise with Wes and Corey. I'm going to give this book a 6.7. I want to leave myself some room to go up. And the main reason is what you guys have already said. I felt there were a lot of breadcrumbs in this book, but I want the loaf. You know, I'm reading this book for the loaf of bread, not the crumbs.
Give me that loaf.
So
give me I want the loaf. Charles,
the loaf is coming. God, I really love free bread at restaurants is really what I'm trying to say. But
dude, Jimmy John's day old. You can't beat it. It's $1. Come on now.
So this book will be important foundation wise, but it is not one that I foresee myself going back to read for what's in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, agreed.
So I think we're all kind of in similar spots. Let's go ahead and jump into things. We're not breaking things up by characters or anything this time so much because we just got to get through this. But let's go ahead and start with some of these big questions. So I will say that an incredible aspect of the High Republic is that even though it's the golden age of Jedi, authors have decided to dedicate a lot of time to building up the rest of the universe, right? Case in point, the Graffs and the Santecas, which took up a huge portion of this novel.
Yeah, it did.
It really is like a whole new aspect of Star Wars history that has been revealed with this turf war between the two families who are hyperspace prospectors. Like hyperspace has always been there, right? It's always been a part of Star Wars. We just kind of assumed hyperspace had always been a thing, but it hasn't been. And now we know that they had to find these lanes. What do you guys think this particular aspect of the Graffs and the Santecas, what does that add to the overall story of the High Republic?
I'm a big fan of all this stuff, actually. First of all, like all this hyperspace stuff that we're getting just in the High Republic in general is really fun, and I like that we've introduced this Hatfields and McCoys type of thing, like in Star Wars. Right? Like it's fun. I mean, it really is fun. And also, we have We have multiple Santekkas in Star Wars now, and then what's his name in Force Awakens?
Yeah, Lauren Santekka.
Yeah, Lauren Santekka. Yeah, I thought it was Lauren. Yeah, Lauren Santekka is interesting, and everybody's still like to this day like, who is that guy? Like he's in the beginning, he seems important. Like, so I mean, this is fun, man. I'm a big fan of all this stuff. This was some of the most enjoyable part of the books for me.
So back on an episode we had a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how some of the stuff we'd want to know be put into a novel or be put into a movie, and this was one of the things that I had asked for, is like, need more background about the Santekkas, and I think there was a lot that's evolved through the comics.
Yeah.
But this was one of the things that I wanted to know about in a novel form, and it's about the Santekkas and kind of the hyperspace lanes, and hyperspace itself has just been it works, just go with it, right? Sci-fi, just go with what we say hyperspace is, and then don't even think about it too much. But now we're getting into like the chemistry of what hyperspace is and how it's kind of being used and how people are using it as a weapon. So yeah, I really thought this was one of the main things I took to take away from this book, so I could use for later, either for later High Republic novels or later for High Republic discussions. But it's one of the things when I think of when I'm reading these novels is, what can I take away from this book that I haven't heard of or I've learned from prior books? And this is one of the ones that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, totally. And Mike just said in the chat a really great point. Charles Soule has said in multiple interviews that his favorite like C, D, E list character was Laura Santekka from the start. So it's clear that because he loves them, that's how they got into all this, and all the authors clearly have followed suit. I agree with everything you guys said, and I want to add in one other part I really loved in all this was Zylan Graf was a very interesting character for me because I thought he was comedically rich.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
like everyone in Star Wars is so poor. I love seeing someone that is just stupidly wealthy.
Yes,
because
yes.
it was hilarious.
He changes outfits in every single scene, and like that.
He owns a building.
I know.
Like,
the scene where she like I think it's from I can't remember whose view it's from, but like there is like commentary about how deep the V in his V-neck is.
Yes, I was just gonna say that. Like the deeper the V, the more expensive the shirt.
Yeah. And it was so great because like it goes back to the Santekkas in Light of the Jedi got their Naboo resort, right? And then you got that, and I love the idea that like, no, this makes you stupid rich. Like everyone on Canto Bight looks poor to these guys, and I'm like, that's kind of a weird, fun world for the Jedi and other people to live in now. Because like we all know in real life, rich people are super weird, man. Like they are completely different. And I liked in this book, Justine is like, no, Zylan Graf has never known anything other than being wealthy. So what kind of person would that make him? And I really liked that added element. In addition to all the tech stuff that you guys said, I'm really stoked that stupidly rich people are getting involved in this.
Somebody's got to live in those high rises on Coruscant.
Exactly.
Sure.
So that was fun.
I couldn't wrap my head around how big this ship was. That they said it looked like a space station or something when they finally moved up to it.
Yeah.
And it had its own hyperdrive and all that other stuff. And I couldn't really wrap my head around how big this thing was. But it didn't. They said it really didn't look like a ship. So I was thinking more of the yacht that's on Solo, a Star Wars story.
Dryden Voss's pleasure yacht.
Yeah, I was picturing that a lot as well. In fact, that's sort of been my go-to. Like whenever they mention any sort of yacht type of thing ever, like I always sort of think of Dryden Voss's ship.
Oh
Wes just wanted to talk about the fish guy again.
That scene, I will say, this is already a tangent, but because Charles Soule's writing so much solo content into War of the Bounty Hunters right now, the lines in that scene are all time the "let's eat a little, drink a lot, and talk privately." Like, dude, all time guy, Dryden Voss. Anyway, cheers, Charles. We're doing great so far.
Yeah, we're 45 minutes in, and I've asked one question. You mentioned Zylan Graf, and I think as a whole family, one of the most interesting aspects is that the Grafs seem to be playing both sides, right? Because while they're clearly working with the Nile to some degree, they've been a huge aspect of the Republic, because it was actually revealed that Catriona Graf was one of the primary funders for building Starlight Beacon itself, right? So they're playing both sides here. Do you think we're going to see that continue, or do you think that they have declared their allegiance by the end of this novel?
That's a good question.
Ooh.
Yeah, I will say that like I was very uncomfortable with how just morally neutral they were in this book. Of just like, oh yeah, we're kind of hanging out with the Nihil, whatever. It's not like they've killed billions of people or anything. It's just like, it's insane. Like, it'd be like being buddy with the First Order when they blew up all those Republic planets, right? So it's like, I don't know, man. I was uncomfortable with all that.
That's kind of like foreshadowing. I don't know if it's foreshadowing, but like when they're on Canto Bight in
Last Jedi, yeah.
Last Jedi, yeah. So like when God, I even forgot that guy's name.
DJ.
Yeah, DJ is looking to see like who the ship belongs to. He's like, oh, this guy sells weapons to the good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah.
They could be like, I mean, ancestors. They could be.
What if the Graf ship?
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
It could be the Grafs that are playing both sides, but they're making money off of both sides. And I mean, we see that in the real world too. So
yeah, I was gonna say that it sounds a lot like real rich people, Charles. I mean, like you think about like the cynical real life stuff. Look at every war ever. It's like, I don't know, rich people are probably just funding both sides and then seeing what happens. So I unfortunately found that very realistic and it made me sad. So to answer your question though, I do think though that they have not picked a side. I think that they're going to keep pouring money into each one, maybe one a little more than the other when there's different victories, but I think we're going to see the Grafs playing both sides going forward. And I also think that opens up a nice door for us never to worry about funding for any of the future battles. Like, how did the Nile get all these ships again? Didn't they get blown up? Well, the Grafs are funding them. Yeah. Whoa, how'd Starlight Beacon get this? Well, the Grafs are funding them too. So it's kind of a nice little cheat code for writers going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond the Grafs and the Santekas, I want to talk some more about some of the normies, if you will, the non-Jedi characters in this book. And one of the biggest ones, obviously, was Sylvester Yarrow. The Muggles, yes, aka Syl. And Syl had a seemingly infinite number of unhealthy relationships in this book, from her ex-girlfriend to her Tempest Runner aunt, kind of, to her back from the dead mother. And though her biggest desires seem to be to just travel the galaxy in her own ship, do you think that her connections to others are going to keep her bogged down in this conflict between the Republic and the Nile?
I mean, Charles, I was in my early 20s once. I feel like
aren't they all like 18, 19, 20 in this book? Like, I think they are.
They're like late teens, early 20s. Which again works for a lot of YA, right? And I think that so it makes sense, at least the timeline wise. I thought that made Syl interesting, and I think it was by the end of it, I think she's in a better place going forward to answer the end of that question. But I thought it was interesting seeing someone work through that many toxic relationships during a book. I think Syl, for my money, was probably the best written character throughout. I mean, I really liked the Vernon stuff and consistent, totally. I think you could tell that Justina really loved this character, and I think we wrote about this in our review, that the choice to make a non-Jedi brand new character the center of a new novel was a huge risk. And then, of course, to mention something we talked about more last year, the fact that she is an LGBTQ plus woman of color is awesome. And I think that and I'm glad I didn't see crap online about it, which is good, which means either people are being cool or I really have muted but I thought
it's
she was
new
cool.
era in Star Wars storytelling. And
we're finally good with it.
That's right.
But it's good to highlight that the normies, if you will, are part of a novel, because there's far more of them than there are Jedi and Nihil. So
this is the galaxy.
There's got to be something going on out there, right? Other than Jedi lightsaber battles and Nihil, stealing and thievery.
She reminds me a lot of Jyn Erso.
Ooh, yeah, for sure. You want to talk about someone that had a lot of bogged down connections in her life.
Exactly. I saw her as that a lot. And I mean, it certainly seems she has a lot of emotional conflict. I mean, she could very easily be a good villain story, like she's fed up with everything and chooses the wrong side kind of story, but like
I do love that we've had so many books in the High Republic about the Jedi and their emotions, right? We've talked about that in Rising Storm, that we're having a lot of Jedi dealing with their emotions and how you don't shut down your emotions, you just control them. And Syl has none of that training or need, so she's just like, I'm failing a lot. My ex is here. My mom is dead. No, she's not. And she's maybe evil. That sucks. You're how rich? Is this cat a chair? Like, I feel like her whole life is kind of chaos. And I thought she, like, that is a protagonist for 2021 right now, to be like, everyone just calm down. I don't know what's happening. Why am I in the Jedi Temple? Can I please just have my ship fixed? So going forward with that all kind of settled, I think when she pops up again, I do feel like it'll be a far different version of that character.
And that note that Chancey said about Lorna D being her auntie, that's not Lorna D's not a Santeca, is she?
Auntie Lorna, no, she's a.
No,
she's just like that's what. It's, yeah, okay, let's make sure that's what we're talking about.
Like it's like, oh, your mom's best friend, you know?
We will be Uncle Corey, Eric, and Charles. That's
exactly it.
We're all
I got
brothers.
big uncle energy.
Big uncle energy. Well, let's talk about some other toxic relationships besides Eric as an uncle. And Syl and Jordana, by the end of this book, after a lot of struggling, are once again a couple, and they kind of more or less fly off into the sunset. But can we talk about Jordana's little circlet of death and casual murder of 20 plus individuals in about as many seconds? Because there have got to be some repercussions with that.
We all have different kinks, Charles. I don't know what to tell you, man.
What was that, and where is that going? Like, that was very odd.
It was equivalent to the arrow from what's his name from Guardians of the Galaxy. Yondu's arrow. You know, where he like whistles and it like flies around and kills everyone.
Yeah, we're like, oh, it's so silly. Ha ha, he's whistling. And then you're like, he just murdered so many.
I mean, but that's what it is, though, right? It's like a spinning boomerang blade
it's a cross,
thing,
cross
right?
between that and Xena Warrior Princess.
Yes,
So that's what that
exactly.
is.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
That was
Oh my
dark.
God,
That whole
Lucy
scene was
Lawless.
dark. It was just like blood and gore everywhere. Even when they all ran into that scene, like later on, they were like, holy shit, what the hell happened here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bodies cut. They Justina added in there about bodies being cut in half, and they had to walk past them, and she slipped on green blood and almost fell down, like from the massacre that she had ensued. It was great. I like that.
Well, and it's
that was good writing.
Because we've had so many moments of like Jedi kill people, right? Like we know this happens, but the lightsaber, because of what it does and how it kills, you either deflect a blaster bolt and it's like they kind of shot themselves, or it's like you slice them and it immediately cauterizes the wound. There's no blood. So Jedi can like sleep well at night for whatever reason, or most of the time they're killing droids, right?
No blood, no foul, right?
Yeah, it reminded me kind of like a Robot Chicken sketch or something where they're like, I'm a hero. Oh my God, my leg! Oh God, blood! Like it, and there's just all of a sudden just gore everywhere. It's that moment of like, oh God, am I dating a psycho? Oh no! I mean, yeah, cool, but oh no! Like I was also in my early 20s. That some of that's fun, but like it's very worrisome, and I do think that doesn't go away with a like, honey, we survived. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she did kind of save their lives. There's a lot of guys out there.
Worked out, you know?
I think
This isn't coming in from a deep, dark place from me or anything. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing it out. I'm just pointing out the facts.
We're about facts here.
But it's got to come back, right?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's not something you just randomly just insert into this novel. Like that is a plot point. We're going to figure out probably where the weapon came from, because they mentioned it. She took it from the Nile, I think is what the book said. But there's got to be more behind that. So we'll see.
That plot point will come back just like the death boomerang, I assume, just kind of swings around back.
Exactly. Nice. So let's talk about Syl and Chancey then.
Yeah.
On page 369, Chancey is talking about Lorna D and about how she is Syl's aunt, and she says, about a year ago, she told me of an oracle who navigated hyperspace like no other. She offered me the chance to finally prove my theory correct, to be able to finally build my machine while aided by the greatest navigational mind that ever existed. Lorna believed in me and thought that it was wholly possible to create a device that replicates the gravity of a heavenly body in real space, thus weaponizing hyperspace. So first of all, I want to point out here, Lorna knew about Marie Santeca a year before the events of this novel, because this takes place several months after the Rising Storm,
right?
Which was when we previously thought the Tempest Runners found out about the Oracle, right? But that means that Lorna knew about this long beforehand and was using that information to her advantage. So casual line there, but actually really big implications.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know how much we're like allowed to talk about Tempest Runner yet. I mean, it's out. It's out officially.
Oh, it's out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
We won't go into huge spoilers. I know a lot of people haven't listened yet, but you can talk about it without us being shut down.
That's right. Okay. So Tempest Runner is about Lorna D, right? Like, so I finished this today while I was working on my trailer, and this plot point doesn't make any flipping sense to me, man. Like, in fact, you know, I didn't realize that Lorna D was the connection to like how the Nile got this weapon in the first place until literally just now. Like, what the heck? This doesn't make any sense. Like, why is Lorna involved? This is so like atypical of her character to be like, oh, this is very interesting science. That sounds possible. Like that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't sound like her character at all.
Okay.
Fair enough. As far as the science goes, especially after listening to Tempest Runner, I don't see her being a huge science freak. I do believe Lorna would find out a secret and then hold it for a year. So maybe the specifics I don't quite understand, but her being like,
it's implied but isn't it implied that Marcion Rowe is all involved in this weapon being built too? I mean, yes and no that it's being built. Like, this can't be a Lorna D secret, right?
He knows because he lends Marie Santeca to basically be the final piece of that weapon. But what gets me is, if she is so powerful and he needs the paths to be the eye of the Nile, then why would he for a second let somebody else take her over if
she is not
if he didn't know
book.
If he didn't already know that she was like on her last leg and she was gonna die pretty soon anyways, even with all that stuff.
And this is what I love. I love that question because I have two ideas about that for Marcion, who, I mean, still one of the MVPs of the whole initiative for me. I love this dude. He shows up for like 3 scenes here. I'm like, what's up, dude? But I think either
Eric.
Hi, buddy. He's either so cocky that he thinks he can't be taken down at this point, which I think might fit with him. He's such a narcissist that he's like, no one would betray me because I'm smarter than anyone around me. Or I do think that he's like, after the Rising Storm, like Marie Santeca's paths, maybe that's more of his father's legacy of like the paths in the Nile are old news. If she dies,
new weapon
I got the leveler. All I needed was the leveler because his whole goal is not about making the Nile the most prosperous band ever. His whole goal is basically, I want to destroy the entirety of the Jedi and the Republic.
I do think of the leveler in this book, other than
I think that makes sense.
Chansey was hoping to maybe deliver some Jedi to him for testing. That was really the only thing.
That was super dark.
Yeah, for testing. That was anytime they talk about bringing humans or sending beings for testing, I'm just like, oh god, it's just it sends a chill up the spine. Because we know we read those Loden chapters. We're like, I know what happens, man. That's awful.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Dude.
Still, the way that Mari was sort of like valued in Marcion's eyes, like earlier in High Republic Phase 1, like does somewhat contrast with this. Like he just lets her go, and also, you know, major spoiler alert, Mari Santeca dies in this book, right? Yeah. So like. You know, not only did he alone her, but she also like got killed, sort of. Like, I mean, I guess she died of natural causes, somewhat. But
this, of being like 200 years old.
This started in the Rising Storm, to be fair, because even in that roundtable, I brought into question why would he ever have let Udi Dis even see Marie Santeca?
Yeah,
he's the one that ultimately got the secret out to Pan Eta. So
that's right.
I think in the Fallen Star they'll have, because every adult novel, it seems like just for this initiative, they're basically writing them so you can read only the adult novels and basically get the story. So I think there will be early mention of her death and Markion's reaction to it. I think there'll be like a, someone giving Vader the news of whatever. He'll like walk in like, I regret to inform you, Marisa Tekka has died. So
Apology
we'll find
accepted, Lord.
Exactly. So he'll be like, yes, I know, or like, well, that's bad, or whatever. I don't know, however he reacts. So I think that'll come around in the Fallen Star.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Which is not till January, by the way. I just double checked
January.
that. Yeah, the next adult novel is not till January, so we got a lot between.
There's plenty in between now and then. Non-High Republic though.
Non-High Republic. Yeah, we got three whole books between then.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Chansey Yarrow and her motivation, because I think that was one of the most kind of thank you for
Pokemon.
That's one of the most unclear, I think, aspects of this book is exactly what is Chansey's really motivation. It was really repeatedly called into question. But here's a quote from page 372 that was what Silvestri hopes is going on, not necessarily what is. And Sil says, maybe she hadn't faked her death, not like Sil thought. Lorna had kidnapped her, and somehow Chansey had maneuvered herself into being in control of the situation. And now she had brought Sil to her prison, all in the name of familial love. But Sil was really on the Gravity's heart because her mother was trying to keep her safe. By bringing her into the belly of the beast, it was such a stupid, risky thing to do, and it was exactly what Sil would expect from her mother. So my question with this is, do you buy that? Like, do you think that Chansey actually is a good person caught up in a bad situation, trying to protect her daughter, or is she actually interested in working with the Nile to pursue her vision of what hyperspace can be?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I say
yes. I mean, I don't know. This Chansey was another character that had some somewhat conflicting type of backstories. Like her, like she was kind of portrayed early in the book in the way that Sil thought of her as being sort of a smuggler kind of character and that sort of thing. And then then we find out, lo and behold, that the scientist has been mentioned multiple times in all of these High Republic books is actually her. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, that was a weird, sudden change of character for her to be somewhat. And even to Sil, I mean, she even said like, well, my mom's a nerd who went to a PhD program or something, right? I mean, that would seem kind of weird for her. And I don't know. It was as shocking for me, the reader, as it was for Sil, I think, of like what her character sort of came out to be. And I don't know what her motivations are. I mean, they're sort of all over the place now. Like she wanted to build this thing, but why? And I don't know. I have a lot of questions about her.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, what you're saying, Corey, I felt the same way. It surprised us still didn't. I think that was, at least from what we can tell, pretty intentional.
Sure.
And I thought that the surprise lasted until the end, where I kind of got the vibe, mainly because of the stun shots, honestly, like that she didn't like the Nile were using stun blasts a lot. There was a lot of prison taking, which the Nile don't do. Like they don't take prisoners. So I think the fact that they did was all Chansey's doing, was all the fact that her daughter was around. I think she's like, hey, I think this technology is gonna exist, so I'll be in charge of it. Because also I think she's morbidly curious. Is like, I'm a scientist and this is new science. I want to be at the front of it. But also, if I'm in charge of it, then my kid won't become victimized by it. So I don't think it's necessarily she has the moral high ground, but I do think she's like, I'll keep working for the Nile and I'll just make sure my kid's safe because I raised her tough. You know, it's kind of the vibe I got by the end.
But even at the end though, she seemed pretty loyal to the Nile. Like it didn't seem like it was this is for your own protection.
She chose the Nile over her daughter.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's still above all. I think she's like, I'm a scientist above all, and I've raised my kid with enough strength to take care of herself if I need to go do this. And I think I don't think she's a good parent. To be clear, I think she has some rough moments. I would probably say.
It's like,
if you will.
But still though, we're talking about like a gravity well generator is in and of itself a weapon. This would be like Galen Erso building the Death Star because it was interesting to him, like because it was fun, right? Which is like a weird, not really cool thing. Right?
I agree.
Like, and
to take that whole project above your family, it seems odd to seems odd to a parent that would want to do that.
I don't think she's a good parent.
No, Eric, we heard you say that she's a great parent. That's exactly what you said. So
can we roll back the live feed? Let's go back to the tape. She's a great parent. God damn it!
I think it's actually cool though that, you know, a lot of times in Star Wars it is like this person is good, this person is bad, and like there are a lot of people in this novel in particular where you're like, I don't really know where this person falls. And I actually kind of got big like Game of Thrones vibes a little bit with this book, including like the Graphs and Everbloom being the name of their compound. Like I got those kind of vibes. And I was like, oh, sure. Who are all these people ultimately loyal to? I don't think we have the answers, but that's also kind of fun. Like we can debate it here, but that's part of the fun is that we don't know.
The three moralities are good, bad, and rich. That's the moral spectrum.
That's how it seems.
How deep is your V?
As deep as your pockets. All right. So let's talk about the Gravity's Heart itself. And a quote here from page 421 says, Lorna D and the Graphs cooked this up long ago. They offered me a chance to test out my theories and the resources to build that weapon. Nan blinked as the pieces slid into place. You always knew that you would get caught. Xylan Graf laughed. Of course, a weapon that can kick ships out of hyperspace, that was always going to be discovered sooner or later. The key was making Ro believe it so we could have access to Marie Santeca, the Graf matriarch said. She was the final piece of the mapping data that we needed to one day create a more successful version of the gravity well projector, one that can predict timing as well as direction. So, hey, at the end of the book, literally, maybe that was the last page, one of the last pages, they finally called it what it is, a gravity well projector. They said the words. And even though we're not in the Easter egg section yet, y'all, gravity well projectors have a very long, rich history in Star Wars, right? This is not a new invention. They actually first appeared back in Scavenger Hunt, which was a supplement to Star Wars, the role-playing game, published in 1989.
Of course, right?
They're repeatedly featured throughout Legends, where they're used by a bunch of different groups, including the Empire, the Vigari, the Killiks, which were the creators of Centerpoint Station, which used gravity well projector technology. So this is all over the place. And this was actually already brought into canon for the first time in Tarkin by James Luceno in 2014. But this is the earliest canonical appearance in the timeline. So I just wanted to for people that maybe haven't read Legends, who have just picked up the High Republic, it's their first Star Wars books, like this was a massive reference and reveal that we're using this technology. It's not a little throwaway thing. Like this is a big deal.
This is why I'm kind of saying it feels weird that such enormous stakes happen in this book, which is a young adult book.
At the end.
Correct.
Which, you know, right at the very end. So
I had to go back and read this. So I listened to it and then I went back and read it. And then went back and listened to it again because it was so profound to have this. I mean, even in a paragraph, they didn't expand on it enough. I don't think Justina had the ability to expand on it enough because, you know, the powers that be. But the whole like having Marchion Ro believe that he had to give up Marie Santeca to be able to make this weapon worth, and then it gets blown up. So now Marchion Ro thinks this whole thing is over with. So it's all gone. But I don't know where this goes because Marchion Ro's not gonna be like, oh yeah, I guess all the technology is gone. But I mean, somebody has the data behind this whole thing, or was it all gone with the destruction of this particular gravity well?
Well, because I think it's interesting seeing the Nile's trajectory going forward, right? Because the first thing that happened in the High Republic was that a path messed up hyperspace and caused this giant disaster, right? So that was one thing. And then they had the Fair, which was a coordinated attack, which is another thing. But now if the Nile can get gravity well projection technology and can just pull ships out of hyperspace whenever they want, that's like kind of seems like the final piece of like hyperspace domination. And if you rule hyperspace, you rule the galaxy, right? So this is where I admittedly, I like the last 100, 150 pages, as we've talked about the last like bit, was the most exciting kinetic part of the book. But there was a lot, as we're saying, kind of crammed in, especially with this stuff, that's where I kind of started to get a little lost of like, there's so much that I both wanted it to keep going as quick as it was, but also slow down a little bit at the same time.
It's all at the end too. All of this stuff is at the end.
Yeah.
Like everything before this was like like romance and classic young adult stuff, right?
Yeah, it's a romance novel, much more akin to like a Crash of Fate or something like that, with some family dynamics, and then at the end, it's like, but by the way, gravity well projectors, which like we're saying is a giant freaking thing, and I'm honestly. What this book did, which is what I kind of want every book to do, but in a weird way, is every book in the High Republic should make me want to read the next one. I should feel good, but I should be excited. And it definitely made me want to read the next one, but in a much different way compared to the other ones where I was like, wait, what?
Listen,
what?
I will say, too, that I feel like we're walking a fine line here, too, as far as explaining technology at this point, because we are only 300 years before the movies, right? And like we've already had explanations of Bacta, like the origins of Bacta, and now the origins of gravity well projectors. Like I don't know that I love all the origins of all this technology all being from this one era. Like that does feel a little bit like they're sort of backing themselves into a corner as far as
we'll have to back up a little on it.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I think that as long as like this kind of stuff feels like it's going to be very plot heavy for the hyperspace stuff. So the back to stuff, I agree. I think that helped with flavor text for why certain places need to be saved. But as far as the hyperspace stuff, I do agree that if they go too far with it, too specific, it'll be odd. But if they can keep it in the prospecting war and the idea that gravity wells can kind of control the galaxy going forward, because I mean. The end of phase 1, I think, is going to solidify a lot of this, and we are rapidly approaching it in January. So I think that'll be very defining as to what the next phase of the hyperspace war is going to be.
It's not far. It's not far enough back for me to buy into it. Is all I mean, really. Sure. Like if we were 5,000 years before the movies or something crazy like that, like I don't know, it makes Star Wars feel small to me. Remember we talked about that in regards to Bad Batch, I guess, on Bounty Hunt we were talking about?
Yeah,
like,
Bad Batch.
Yes. Yeah. And like some storytelling decisions make Star Wars feel small, and like creating all the origins in such a short period of time before the films will to me make Star Wars feel small. So you got to be careful with this. If they explain something else like Tabana gas, like the first time it's ever used or something like that in a blast, I'm gonna be like, no, all right, I've had enough. That's it.
We already had that, luckily. That was in Light of the Jedi. So you're good with Tabana gas. Check that off the list.
That's right.
Just don't explain where Yoda came from, please.
That's right.
Don't do that.
Just to be clear, in the Old Republic, they had ships using hyperspace lanes, correct?
They in Legends.
The Old Republic.
In Legends, in Legends.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure like gravity well projectors, I'm not sure if what their origin was, like storytelling wise in Legends was. I know you talked about like kind of meta, Charles, like where they came from, but like world. But like where do they come from in Legends? I don't actually know the answer. This is a Trevor question.
So I think the Killiks were the people who created the technology, if I'm not mistaken. And then it basically just got kind of borrowed by others. But now we're seeing it used by the Nile, right? And Eric, you kind of addressed this, but I'm curious what everyone thinks here. Is that now going to be the backbone of how the Nile pose their attacks? Because Marie Centek is gone. So paths are gone. They're not going to pop into atmosphere on Valo again, right? That ability is essentially gone. So how are the Nile going to gain an advantage?
Or the new paths are gone. We don't know how many he banked. He was banking a lot.
That is true. And we also don't know how exactly the paths work, because actually in this book in particular, there's a moment that really caught me off guard. And this is kind of a tangent, but it was when they're trying to board the Gravity's Heart. And they're flying their ship. There's a Nile ship coming straight at them. It pops out of existence and reappears right behind them a second later. And that's kind of different than how paths had worked previously, because you have to load it into your engine and like figure out how you have to be given it. So like they just happen to have a path that let them do the exact thing they needed to when a ship was flying at them.
We saw it in did we see it in Kevin Scott's last book of like them jumping around during the space fight? Wasn't that in Kevin Scott's book?
That was in Light of the Jedi, wasn't it? That was in Light of the Jedi where they're jumping inside other ships, other Republic ships. You're talking about? During
I
that
don't
crazy
know.
mayhem fight?
I just
I don't
remember a big
remember.
crazy mayhem
They,
fight.
they
I thought
jump
it was
around in atmosphere on Valo at the
Yeah.
Republic Fair, so that
Yeah.
does happen.
maybe that's what I'm thinking of, but yeah, what you're saying, like being, I don't know, there is somewhat of a conflicting thing here about the paths and how they work, and like.
And can you reuse a path? And can you access a path from different points? There's still a lot to be explained there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope that they could reuse the paths because
Yeah.
damn, those paths would be. I mean, they would be. Like, I don't know if you could put a price on them, but they would obviously be priceless if you can only use them
I'm sure
once.
Xylan Graph can put a price on them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a
But
lot
the
of
price is
questions,
no object.
and maybe we're not supposed to understand that. This is just one of those things we kind of just close our eyes and be like, okay, it's Star Wars, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. All these questions, I think we will get answers to as we move forward. But we got to move on to Vernestra Rowe. I want to talk a little bit about her because she, I think, is one of the most important characters in this book. I think she could have been like the main character. I'm glad and I'm interested that they did it from Sylvester's point of view more so than Vern's. But out of all the Jedi, Vern took center stage for sure. She discovered new Force abilities and learned how to be a better master to her Padawan. But from her hyperspace visions to her light whip, she is accumulating a lot of secrets now that she's keeping from the rest of the Jedi Order. Do y'all foresee any fallout from that?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
No. Not at all. There's gonna be no-
Jedi secrets never
man.
go well, man. That's just how it goes.
The first thing when I read that, I was like, she shouldn't be doing that. That's obviously a no-no, right? She should not be keeping secrets, especially ones like these. That is a path to the unknown that she has, that she knows about. I mean, who is Stellan Gios? Is that's her former master? And she he encouraged her to work on these visions, but he didn't know exactly how deep it went, and she doesn't want to reflect on that. She doesn't want to elaborate more on what she's seen or what she's feeling. So there's some deep underlying things I hope that comes out in the later novels or the later comics or whatever, that we get to hear a little bit more about what Vern's going through.
Very interesting decision to make Stellan Gios her master. I feel like. I mean, that was very interesting and kind of weirdly very supportive of his character. I feel like like kind of painting that picture of like somewhat woefully naive a little bit, oh yeah, sure, my Padawan is absolutely ready to be a Jedi Knight. She's only 16, like. I mean, it was somewhat of a stretch, and
clearly just got her driver's license.
Yeah, right.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, man.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like, is not all of this stuff that we see happen in this book with her character, is that not supportive of like the fact that she was not ready to be a knight? I mean, she's creating.
She has that bumper sticker on her Vector. It says "student driver."
Yeah.
Oh my god.
She always wrecks it.
I love that detail also, that she sucks at flying. I think that's great. I love her having these visions, right? Because I love the idea that she, like, no one else has hyperspace visions. That's not a thing, right? And she's like, I go into hyperspace and I have these visions and everyone's going to think I'm weird. And I like that in the previous novels and comics, they've set her up as like a perfectionist, as like, I have to be the best at what I do, right? So I think she's like, oh my God, if they think I'm weird or if they think I'm off, then they're going to question my status. So I until I figure out what to do about this, because I'm a Jedi Knight and I should figure it out. I think it's a somewhat, it makes sense, but as a reader, I agree. I'm like, oh no, you gotta tell Stellan. Oh God, because B Nasty in the chat makes a great point. The Force is definitely influencing her, but what side of the Force? Like, what is in hyperspace? Is it light? Is it dark? Is it neutral? And honestly, though, if I was a brand new Jedi Knight and I came back from a mission and was like, so, a thing exploded. we lost a bunch of tech, and then this like 200-year-old woman died. But before she did, she telepathically gave me a path to an unknown place where the Nihil might be. It might be a trap, but I think I might go there alone. And it's based on a vision that I had in hybrid. Oh yeah, I'm still having those visions. Sorry, I didn't tell you. What do you think? I think it would go well.
Yeah, it's just like,
That's
but
fair.
it's just over the top though. Like all of the secrets she's keeping at this point are just like, it's not even logical that she's keeping these type of secrets, right?
She's too deep. She's too deep.
Yeah,
in it.
like-
Here's a thought for you. In some ways, Vern is like a star of the Jedi Order. People meet her, and the immediate thing that they think of is, oh, she's the knight that was knighted at 15 years old.
Yeah.
And now she's
youngest ever.
accumulating all these secrets, and we don't really know what's going on in her head.
You're
She
on
has
this
a
council, but
quote
we do not
from-
grant you the rank of master.
Yes. So on page 72, she makes a comment about how the rules of the Jedi Order are more like guidelines. Shout out to Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, could she be the fallen star? Like maybe it's not Starlight Beacon. Maybe we're going to see a Jedi
Ooh.
fall.
Also, Charles, sorry, that's Captain Barbosa that says that.
Oh, is it Barbosa?
Not to Caribbean, not to pirates gatekeep you.
I love that.
But yeah, I mean,
franchise,
she
by the way.
absolutely could.
Yeah.
She totally could be. And
Just
yeah, B
thinking out
Nasty
loud.
also said she's got
I'd
this
like to
light
see it.
whip. She's like,
Yeah.
I've been breaking rules since day one, man. And she is kind of like the Simone Biles of the Jedi, right? Where like everyone's like, you're young and you're the best ever, but a lot of people are probably waiting for her to mess up. You know,
Yeah.
and it's like
yeah, I mean, that
pressure's gotta
master,
be
that
insane.
master says to her face, like, I agree that you were granted like knighthood before you were ready. Like, okay, like,
Vicious!
say it right to her
Come
face, man. Yeah,
Nice to
like,
meet you too.
Okay,
I'm
boomer.
Vern. Like
yes,
what?
exactly.
I think she puts a lot of pressure on herself to figure out on her
Yeah,
own
she
because
does.
she's so
Yeah.
young. She doesn't
Yeah.
want, like, they gave her that responsibility as being a Jedi Knight for like as at a young age. So
Right.
don't come to me back to me with these petty problems. Figure them out yourself, kind of thing.
But also like I don't know how common just like weird Jedi powers are like in Star Wars, but like
Fair.
like she just has these really wild visions while she's in hyperspace. She's like, oh yeah, that's not important. Like let's not think about that at all. It's like what?
And
Like,
Vern,
they're-
that doesn't
they
happen.
come true.
Yeah, they come
is the
true,
thing.
and
If they
like-
were
like, too,
dreams,
like-
it'd be one thing. But since they come true, I'm
Yeah,
gonna tell
but like
somebody.
she would wake up to like 3 people standing over her, and they'd be like, "What's going on?" She'd be like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." Like, no, you
fine,
were
shut up.
seizing.
Yeah, exactly. She's just like blowing. She's like
No, she's
blowing
not
it
getting well.
off. Exactly. It's just blowing it
No.
off. It's just like that doesn't make any sense. So like
It is
that,
also so weirdly.
she
you know
irritated
what-
me as a character the whole time. Every time we arrived at her in the book, I was like, God, this again? Like, come on.
You know what Vernestra is? Vernestra is just a millennial because she was told she's gifted and she was pushed way too hard. And every time she has a problem, she's like, "It's fine, it's fine. I can't tell anyone. I'll figure it out." And then she has anxiety and she's just worried people are gonna judge her all the time. And
That's
then,
right.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
So
that checks out. That
not
checks out.
relatable at all. No idea what that means. But hypothetically, I assume that's very hard.
Well, let's talk about her biggest secret in a little bit more detail. We've obviously already been talking about it, but Marie Santeca makes a statement to Vern on page 377. She says, "I have a gift for you. One last path before I pass on. It was always meant for you."
That's dope.
Specifically for Vernestra Rowe. It's really interesting, right? And later on page 399, we see Santeca give that path to Vern. And this is the passage we get. For half of a heartbeat, Vernestra hesitated, but then she closed her eyes and reached out to the half-dead woman. The woman reached back, the connection like and unlike a force bond. For a moment, nothing happened, but then Vernestra began to see flashes of the old woman's life, a childhood spent on an idyllic planet, her first trip through hyperspace, and then something different, the blue of hyperspace, seemingly less random and more deliberate, diverting and flowing in the same way Vernestra perceived the force, a rushing, branching, fluid thing that could be charted and mapped and explored. And then Vernestra saw it, the path. A proper thing to be named and followed and remembered. Vernestra felt the memory of it being carved on her mind. No matter what happened, she would know how to get there. The place beyond the edge of the galaxy where no living thing should go, and no one had gone for a very, very long time. So, do you guys think that her visions tie back to the rumor that was presented in this book that the earliest travelers through hyperspace were Jedi who accessed it using the Force?
No, there were squids. We've already established that.
They were squids.
Corey, they were whale squids.
It's pronounced squibs, and they're not the same as muggles. They're slightly different. But anyway.
I do love that idea, though. I mean,
I like that too.
Or does it tie back? Do you think
I
it
have
ties
mixed
back
feelings.
to Skywalking on them haters? You know? From the Thrawn novels, it sounded a little bit like
they were blue children.
Skywalking.
They weren't squids or Jedi. It was little blue kids. That's
So
what
are
it
you
was.
saying the visions that she's had when she goes into hyperspace, they were all meant to come to this one point with Marie Santeca, and now that she knows, she's not going to have visions anymore?
I don't know. Will she
I think
have
she'll.
more
So, I
visions?
think she'll keep
either.
getting them.
Yeah.
Regardless, she's going to tell everybody that they're not important.
Yes, until they like cripple her or something. Until I mean, visions have always been such a thing in Star Wars, and no pun intended for Star Wars Visions coming out in September. But like the vision that Skier has, the vision that Elzar has, and other visions that
Ahsoka in the Clone Wars. There's a
Ahsoka,
whole
like-
arc dedicated to that.
absolutely like, and I think the fact that they do come true in this. Are now I think freaking her out even more, because I think if you have visions that don't come true, you're like, I'm having weird dreams, the Force is being weird. But if you start having to think like, wait, am I 16 years old and can I see the future?
And
like-
she did bring up being a way seeker. Is this what way seekers feel when you're being pushed by the Force and pulled by the Force at the same time? So that could be another thing where does Vernestra leave the Order and become a way seeker?
It'd be interesting to see her.
Is
be a
she
way
part of the
seeker,
Lost
'cause
20s?
She's such a stickler for order and for propriety and that kind of stuff, or at least she was. We see her questioning a lot of that in this novel. It'd be very interesting to see her kind of loosely, I don't know, adjacent to the Order in the form of a way seeker.
Yeah.
I could dig. I mean, hey, we got years.
So last big question here.
Yeah.
Santeca's final path leads to, I'm going to say this quote again, the place beyond the edge of the galaxy where no living thing should go and no one had gone for a very, very long time. Any thoughts on what this could be referring to or where this is going?
It's Ezra. No.
Oh my God.
This is the introduction of time travel in Star Wars, guys. Oh my God.
It's Exegol.
Yes.
Where no living thing should go, but somebody has been there a while back, or something has
Is it
been
where
there.
they got the leveler from in the first place before they put it in ice?
maybe with all mysteries in Star Wars, it's the what's the place with the like Mortis and the grandfather? World Between Worlds. Maybe that's what it is.
the world between, or Mortis?
Maybe you can get there on
Just
or
Mortis.
Mortis. Maybe it is Mortis. Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh my God.
Beyond the edge of the galaxy. I don't even know what that means.
The part that says beyond the edge of the galaxy made me think about no space, like the weird area of space that the Nile have, but obviously they've all been there. So it's very
Well, no one had gone for a very long time. That's because also when if Marie Santeca is saying very long time, it's been a bit.
900 years old you reach.
So, I think.
I don't know. No
It's
idea.
a big plot point. We don't
It
have
is.
answers.
I know.
We don't have-
I'm
like
telling
that
you,
they
there's so
did
much that
this
happens. in
open
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this was at the very end of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Hey,
It was.
also maybe it's that place where Yoda goes in season 6, like where the wills are.
Yep,
You
that's
know,
so
maybe it's
interesting.
like. Again, it could. I think that's the beautiful thing about the High Republic, right? Is that it could be a really cool reference, or it could be something brand new. That's also really cool. Like they have so many options available, and the fact that now there's no way they can accidentally find out about it unless Vern willfully gives it up, because Marie's gone. She wrote it down nowhere. There is no backup drive. You know, they didn't back up the hard drive to make sure that if Vern dies, they can figure it out. So
Marie Santeca was for sure Windows 97.
out question. When she died, did it go bum 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 bum?
Oh no. No.
All right.
That's not good.
All right. Well, let's talk about some Easter eggs, connective tissue, and random thoughts. Of course, I promise I try to only include the best. Let's go ahead and run through these. On page 1, that's right, page 1 of this book, Nostra Berry wine is mentioned, which is an alcoholic beverage from the planet Dalna that first appeared in A Test of Courage. So Justina Ireland bringing some of her own creations back nice and early. On page 2, we have a quote here that says, if they had still been part of the Buying Guild, which was dissolved because of its abuse of indentured crews, there would have been some protection from creditors. But without the guaranteed jobs and profit sharing of the guild, Syl was at the mercy of her own business sense. And now, that's obviously talking about events that happened in Claudia Gray's Into the Dark, but I think it's interesting to see the downside to a moment that was touted as so positive and victorious. From the point of Affie Hollow.
Oh yeah.
Right? So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? On page 9, coaxium is mentioned. Later on that same page, spinefish are mentioned, which were first created for Galaxy Guide 12, Aliens, Enemies, and Allies, a supplement to Star Wars the role-playing game.
It's my third favorite Galaxy Guide.
Supplement?
Yeah. Great.
Don't worry, there's more coming up later. There's actually a lot from the role-playing game made its way into this novel. It's really interesting.
I love that.
On page 17, Emery is talking about his new lightsaber, and he says, and I promise I will not lose this one. Okay, Anakin.
Yeah.
Okay.
This weapon is your life.
Your life.
No, master. A trimester.
He literally says master like 4 times in that scene. It's just like, oh.
Hey, man.
Save it
She
for
went in there to
Attack of the
run,
Clones
not to
commentary.
hide. Yes, master.
Hey,
Where
if
are
you
you
looked into
going,
Ewan's
master?
eyes, wouldn't you?
For a drink.
Don't
All
say
right,
that,
on page
master.
22, Vern, we're talking about Vern here, and the quote says, otherwise, she would maybe find a way to spend all her time basking in the calm tranquility of the cosmic force and never return to the messy day-to-day business of the living force. While that's definitely not a comment about our actual podcast of the same name, it really does seem to apply.
I
Both
did think
of
about
them.
that, yes.
Tranquility of
Every
the
time.
cosmic force and the messy day-to-day of the living force.
That's us.
That's right.
It's so true.
Wow, called out.
Right. On page 28, Reith and Comac are talking, and we have the quote, Master Comac, did you really need all 64 volumes of Lyric Schmeierlin's Almanac of the Unknown? Reith asked. The data tape edition has a few locations and some information the data bank version does not, Master Comac said. And I just had a new first thought. Lyric Schmeierlin sounds like Ned Schneebly from School of Rock. Second of all, this sounds like something that Trevor would say
Yes,
from the
it does.
team. Like
It absolutely does.
You have to have all of them.
And last of all, fun fact, Lyric Schmeierland was a male explorer that the Republic hired to catalog planets throughout space, and his almanac was used by Avon Staris' droid J6 to identify the planet Weevo in a test of courage. So that was a kind of a cooler deep cut from that.
I also wonder if
Very.
Justina Ireland has a relative named Eric, because that's something should be Lyric Schmeierland. Like, they do that all the time.
I also have to wonder, like this is implied that these are heavy books, right? And like,
Yes.
and we all kind of laugh. It's like, okay, it's a funny joke that there's these multiple volumes set, but like, I mean, it's kind of like known knowledge that there's not like a lot of books and paper and stuff like in Star Wars. In fact, like that was even in this book when what's his name, the rich dude, like he wrote a note in an envelope, right? And they made a big deal out of it. Remember, it's like, oh God, paper, he's really rich, right? Like, I don't
What is this,
know.
what is this,
60
I think
Waterworld?
these were data tapes, though. I think they were like not.
Is that what it was?
not
It wasn't implied they're
books
books.
themselves.
Why are they still so heavy? I mean, God, how heavy is a floppy disk? Maybe they're on floppy disks, and like only like 3 paragraphs can be on each one. So there's like hundreds of them.
Incredible.
Listen, in 1995, Titanic took 2 cassette tapes. Okay, like,
all right, I can buy that.
all right. So on page 30, Reith has a meal in Starlight Beacon's cafeteria, which includes blue butter, which I presume is made by churning blue milk.
Charles,
That's incredible.
which I presume is made
how
by
else?
Churning.
How else do you get it?
Oh God.
Any of us thought that, but you.
Explain how else.
That's it. That's it.
I can't even argue with that.
All right. On page 38, Nan's on Marky and Rowe says, it gave Nan a thrill every time she saw him like this. Helmet off, black hair free to hang over his bare leathery skin and his star-marked shoulders. His pitiless eyes were all black, and Nan stood close enough she could see the slight ruffle on the edge of his ears. The Rowe thirst is real.
It is. Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
goodness.
So thirsty.
What a
There's
dark
been a lot of
boy.
chatter. There's been a lot of chatter online of like Rowe thirst as like a joke, kind of, but it's like it has worked its way into
It
the
has.
actual material.
Yeah,
He's hot.
His voice by Mark Thompson does not fit his body at all. I can say that. It's just every time every time I see his picture, I'm just like, yeah, that's not actually him.
I'm curious now if our voices fit our bodies. If you're listening to this and you've never tuned in live, please check out our YouTube and email us, ceo@youtini.com, about whether our voice fits our bodies.
And before you listen, just go to a random point in the video, pause, and don't hear anything, and pick which voice you think goes with which face.
Just guess.
I think that'd be fun.
So on page 39, the very next page, we have this quote here. Marky and Rowe picked up a small object next to his chair and threw it at the Ithorian. Nan had only a glimpse of it before it attached to the Ithorian's face. The other pirate pulled at the thing, which Nan now could see was one of the sticky charges the Nile sometimes used to get through particularly stubborn airlocks. There was no time for the Ithorian to say anything before the entire top half of his body exploded, the detonation also taking out his friends who stood too close to him. The rest of the Nile didn't even flinch. It wasn't a party without at least a little murder. So there's no fact here. I just wanted to say, damn. Like,
Yeah.
Tell me that you did not read this scene without thinking of a plasma grenade in Halo when you throw it.
100%.
Yeah, you throw it at the little
100%.
grunts and they're like, ah! They run and blow up. Yeah,
So
that's
there's a small hole in the crowd that's watching Marky on Row where it's dead people, but then there's also people within the crowd outside of that radius that got parts of bodies on them, and they're just like they just keep on going with their day to day. They don't even wipe it off.
Whatever, man.
Walk it off, baby. Walk it off. On page 78, Vern says, when I was a Padawan, I thought all the older Jedi had figured everything out and that the Force would give me that same kind of insight when I became a Knight. But here I am more than a year later, and I still just feel confused and conflicted as I did when I was a youngling. And I just want to point out, it's comforting to know that imposter syndrome affects Jedi too.
Right.
It's so helpful. It's so helpful.
And who would have thought that 16-year-olds would look back at their 15-year-old self and be like, man, I thought I would have it all figured out by now.
It does make me laugh because it sounds like a 16-year-old. No offense to any 16-year-olds that listen to this, that she's like, now more than a whole year later, I don't have this all figured out yet. It's like, okay.
Well, at least once I'm 25, I'll know how the world works.
Yes,
And be able to rent a car or a Vector.
If I don't have a house by the time I'm 30, I'll just kill myself. Like, well,
yes.
all right.
All right, page
Oh,
84,
millennials.
Vern again. We're talking about here, and the quote says, she woke some nights to the wailing of the people hurt in the attack, the cries of pain and terror echoing in her mind, even though it had been weeks. Master Josiah, a Jedi counselor who helped ensure Jedi remained balanced after terrible events, had told her once that remembering was part of how one dealt with the pain and trauma of a disaster. But Vernestra would have liked to remember it a bit less. Her anger toward the Nile could become a liability if she gave into it completely, instead of acknowledging it, letting it go, and remembering her oath as a Jedi. So Jedi had therapists, first of all, and why didn't Anakin ever go see one? Like, where was Josiah at?
Budget cuts.
Oh man! If I had
Also,
$1 for all the times that me and Caitlin have talked about how Anakin needs therapy because Caitlin's a therapist, like yes, you're right.
He needed a Josiah.
It just works.
And it also is nice here to remember that even our heroes in fantasy stories need help, right? That was a nice kind of inclusive fact. 84, Imri asked to go to the Opera House when they arrive on Coruscant, where Palpatine tells Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. On page 86, someone is mentioned to be in a hover chair. And it's another moment of inclusion because as far as I know, that may be the first time we've ever seen like a wheelchair equivalent in Star Wars. There have been hover sleds for huts and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I don't know that we've ever seen a hover chair. So that was interesting.
Professor X type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. On page 89, Master Nabarin, the Jedi shipmaster of Starlight Beacon, is introduced as a Filar Nitzan, And this is a legend species described as gaseous, similar to a storm cloud with eyes. And it was first created for Alliance Intelligence Reports, a supplement to none other than Star Wars, the role-playing game, published in 1995.
Awesome.
Excellent. It's fart from
Cool
Rick and Morty.
edition. Oh man,
God.
I will never see that the same. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
On page 111, Master Comac says, historically, fighting the Republic's battles hasn't always gone well for the Order. And this statement in particular was made in regards to a, quote, long ago massacre on Dalna. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, in the Rising Storm, statements were made by Marky and Rose's cousin Kufa about the quote-unquote faithful. And she mentions Dalna. She says this, you've seen it out there, seen them with their golden robes and flashing blades, so resplendent, so glorious, the guiding light of the galaxy. They are guiding us to destruction. The faithful know it, as we knew it on Jeddah, as we knew it on Dalna.
Dalna, right.
So whatever happened on Dalna may be directly tied to the creation of the Nile.
Love it.
I think we might learn about this massacre moving forward.
Awesome.
Probably.
Please.
On page 134, Gurlian fur is mentioned, and this is a specific textile produced from a type of lichen on the planet Hynestia that was first featured in Lando's Luck by Justina Ireland.
Nice.
On page 143, we have this quote, this was probably not the time to tell the woman that Vernestra did not particularly care for blasters. Why would one need such a crude weapon when one had a lightsaber? And I just have to agree, they're very uncivilized. On 164, we have this quote, Syl had only seen one other Gungan in her life, and that one had spoken basic with an odd patois that made him seem silly and a bit stupid, an affectation he used so he could more easily separate his marks from their money in the dockside gambling dens. So is Jar Jar faking it? Is
No,
that-
he's just actually a moron. This guy was just pretending to be a moron.
This guy was great.
He was pretending to be Jar Jar.
That's right.
On page 166, it's mentioned that Professor Wolk taught Chansey Yarrow at the Academy of Karita. And while this has already been canonized in a slew of other projects, including Solo: A Star Wars Story and the Tarkin novel, it has pretty extensive Legends roots as a military academy that was used by both the Republic and the Empire during various eras. And we actually see it come into play in Tempest Runner as well. So that's cool. 169, Tanneray wine from Alderaan is mentioned. On page 180, a Weequay vendor tries to sell the Jedi, quote, authentic kyber crystals from the holy city of Jeddah.
Yep.
So that's
Awesome.
Obviously fake.
Yep.
Probably not
real
real.
quick, Charles, I'm looking at the outline, and you're going to a page, and you're skipping over my favorite Easter egg. So I'm going to insert from page 185.
okay.
You are lost came a familiar voice, and Vernestra turned around to see Master Yaddle walking toward her.
Oh my God.
Oh, Yaddle season, baby. It's the only note I took in all caps. Yaddle's in the book. Yaddle. Back.
I think yes.
Yaddle, Master Yaddle, how are you? I thought you were still on sabbatical, which is also where Yoda was in the High Republic Adventures, which means there's a Yoda Yaddle adventure that we're not getting yet. Write it. What are they doing?
Yes.
I know what they're
you're
doing.
right.
They're making little Grogu. This is what they're doing.
That's right.
Oh, that's gross.
They're getting Grogu,
I don't get it.
Grosku up in there. Anyway, Yaddle's in the
Okay.
book, and I freaked out. So
Charles, continue.
Please. On page
Yaddle.
214, Cineteens are mentioned. And, you know, those are the guys where their entire heads look like brains. And they were first seen in A New Hope, but featured several times in the Clone Wars TV show. Specifically, there was a guy named Brick who was a Cineteen. And fun fact here that will forever help you remember this species name in the future. Cineteen is an anagram for Einstein.
Oh, my God.
Because their entire head is a brain.
Of course
Awesome.
it is.
great.
I can't picture this at all. I'll look this up later.
No, it all makes sense.
Look them up. You'll recognize them. On page 215, we have this quote: "The San Tekkas had always been a bit hard scrabble, but they suddenly ran into a bit of luck, mapping new routes through places like the Relgum Run and the Bitmus Cloud, high-value routes. And the Relgum Run originated in Legends in Riders of the Maelstrom, a 1989 supplement to Star Wars, the role-playing game.
Classic.
And
Great.
prior to Out of the Shadows, it was brought back to canon in Star Wars Smuggler's Guide, where it was mentioned on a warrant that was only included in the deluxe edition of that book.
Wow.
Really?
Gotta pay the
I
big
don't
bucks,
know.
you know?
Yes. On page 252, Vern uses force speed as an ability, and that's something that we pretty rarely see. So that was cool.
Phantom Menace.
I see it as a cheat in
Phantom
Warzone
Menace.
all the time. But continue.
I've been playing Star Wars KOTOR 2 on my phone lately, and like it's impossible to walk around without that activated. It's just you walk too slow. So if I was a Jedi, I would use it literally 24/7.
Can you use force speed when you talk to an Ithorian? That is all. That I
Listen, I tried to screen cap. I talked to Ithorian the other day, but I couldn't make it happen very well. So
Next time, let us know.
we'll do.
On page 262, Reith says, Master Comac, Master Stellan, I have a bad feeling about this, which is carrying out the classic
Love it.
tradition.
Got it.
On 266, Moof Juice is mentioned, which is a beverage you can go get at Docking Bay 7, Food and Cargo at Galaxy's Edge.
I will not be doing that.
I will.
You don't have to.
I will.
It's there.
Next month, hashtag Eric goes to
really?
Galaxy's Edge. In October, I'm going to Disneyland for my birthday week.
Oh,
Didn't tell us
man.
that.
I bought my
Jealous.
plane tickets. I also, Freddie, respond to my Slack message. I asked you if I can stay with you. Let me know.
It's probably a reason for
Please
that.
film it, put it on the YouTube channel, and steal one of Freddie's awesome Star Wars artifacts and bring it back to me.
I will get you that Obi-Wan Mythos statue. I know what you want.
Thank you. On page 302, we have this quote. Jordana had always been a bit of a Force enthusiast. Her interests usually focused on the numerous ways cultures related to it. And she had even said she wanted to study the Force if she ever left TK and went to university. Have you ever heard of the Church of the Force? My uncles are very into it, something that people have become enamored with on Naboo. They mentioned it to me in passing during my last situation report a month or so ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since.
Yeah.
And so it must run in the family because remember, Lor Santeca, who we talked about earlier, is a member of the Church of the Force when we meet him in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, that was a really good Easter egg.
And the reference to the uncles, that's the two Santecas that were in
Yes.
what
In
was
Light of the Jedi.
Light of the Jedi.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
That's them.
Absolutely. On page 316, Vern refers to her visions as, and I quote, hyperspace tripping. And I would have thought that name was already taken by some of the Niles activities, but that's okay. On page 356, we learned that the Niles toxic gas is actually derived from one used by the Zygerians to help suppress slave uprisings. And we also learned that salsaberry juice can help fight its effects. So the Jedi better start planting some salsaberry bushes, like real quick. On page 365, Zeltros.
I'm not too funny. I'm sorry.
And Zeltros is a vacation destination that of Dr. Afra's in her 2016 comic run.
Oh, sick.
So that was cool. On 362, someone says, "Who in the Twin Suns is the Eye?" And all I have to say is, don't mention Tatooine's solar system in vain.
How dare you?
Lastly, on 415, Xylan leaves a note and a token of some kind for Syl. And he wrote in his note, "While my funds have been frozen by the Republic and the rest of my assets seized, I have a friend on Takodana who is always looking for enterprising new partners. You should look her up and give her this when you get there." And so it's confirmed several pages later that is, in fact, Maz Kanata. I'm curious about this token, though.
Me too.
And I wonder if maybe we saw it like in the background somewhere in like the chest where the lightsabers were or something like that in The Force Awakens. I've been meaning to go back and watch some of those scenes, but that's all I got, guys.
I think you're confused because this was Maz Kanata and that's somebody else.
Maz Kanata in this book. I think it's Maz's cousin.
Yeah.
Her evil twin Maz.
That's right.
All right, so that's all I have, guys. Let's re-rate this book 1 to 10 and give me any final thoughts. Let's just go in the same order we did before. So Wesley.
Okay. I'm gonna keep my original score at 6.9. The major thing for me to rate it lower than what I had before is a lot of the details that I had read came at the end of the book, much like everybody was talking about before. I did like, however, how Justina had put a lot of emphasis on Vern and how she is going to be or needs to be a key Jedi going forward in the High Republic because she has these secrets and leaves us kind of on the edge of our seat of what she's going to do with these secrets and what she's going to do with this path that hasn't been used for a very, very long time, kind of thing. But a lot of the information that kind of built up all the way to the end of the book, I'm not sure it needed to be in there, to be honest with you. I mean, but it was a young adult novel. I get it. I understand all the context behind it. But the having kind of felt like it was crammed in at the end kind of made me level the book down a little bit more than it should.
Agreed. Yeah, I gave this book a 6.8, which is in the mediocre category for our scoring, and I will bump it up to 7, which puts it in the okay category, which is a little more neutral, I feel like. I mean, everything is relative. Like, this book, like, maybe doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of, like, Phase 1 of the High Republic, but, like, some of the major plot points really hit hard and, like, are going to have lasting value, I think. This book probably did an introduction for a lot of cool stuff, so, you know, there's redeeming qualities. Did take a long time to get into the book, though. I will say there was some conflicting stuff, I feel like, with some of the characters we've seen already in other works, and but you know, it's a young adult book, so the stakes are not quite as high in general with young adult books. So
totally. I'm gonna stay at my 8.4 as well, which is I know easily the highest among us, but I will say. It's not one of my favorites in the world. I did like this book probably better than Into the Dark, if we're going in High Republic rankings, I guess, which we don't need to, but just for a reference. It's probably the closest I have to it. I still, like you said, I like the last 150 really did a lot for me. And I do think the more we talk about it, I'm going to be thinking this a lot in retrospect based on what happens down the line. No, that is admittedly rating a book based on the hypothetical future, which whatever, it's my rating.
Classic.
Like, exactly, it's a different thing. But I thought that the characters were written really nicely. Not the kind of pace I would always want with the book, but I think is perfectly fine in the middle of this kind of wave and gets us ready for whatever wave 3 is going to do to us in January. Which I know we have like. What, 4 months until then? I don't think it's enough time.
Between now and
I don't think it's enough time for me to mentally prepare for what's going to happen based on this. So I like where this is going, and I'm excited to hear, Charles, your Easter eggs for future books that link back to this one. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so I don't think any of us really budged very much, and I'm kind of in the same vein. I think I gave this, what was it, a 6.7? I'll give it a 6.8. I like a lot of the aspects at the end of this book, like we're saying, the things that are going to have implications in later books. But if I'm just looking at this book in and of itself, and I'm rating this book, it was one of my least favorite that has come out of the High Republic so far. And when I sit down and I dedicate a bunch of time to read a book, I want to feel like the book itself is a big deal, not that it's all set up, which is kind of how I felt like this book was. So
yeah,
totally, that's where I'm coming at it from. But that's it, guys. That's all we got. So Eric, take us home.
All right. What I'm going to do before we get on out of here, I just want to give a little preview to folks. First of all, thank you for watching our episode, listening to this roundtable, however you did it. It does mean a lot to us. Hope you enjoyed it. Looking ahead, next week, I'm going to try to start doing this as best I can. We will be having a crossover event within the Youtini podcast network. We're going to be talking about women in Star Wars. With us, Legends Look Back on the Cosmic Force, we will be having some guests from within our very own Youtini staff on next week to talk about the role of women both in creating Star Wars and featuring in Star Wars. It's been a hell of a year for women in the fandom, both on screen and just reading, writing, creating in general. So we're going to celebrate that next week. We hope to see you for that. And if you want to get a head start on our next roundtable, our roundtable on Kevin Scott's Tempest Runner will be another 2-parter, and that will be starting on the 27th of this month. So 3 weeks from tonight, we'll be doing our next roundtable, 2 parts. You have till then. The audio drama is currently on Audible, and the review is on Youtini, written, and in our YouTube channel if you want to watch the video. So just a heads up for what's going on there. But my friends, that will do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you support us on Patreon, we want to thank you for that support. We can't wait to hang out with you very soon to watch some Rogue One. And of course, a special thank you to Cheryl Bell, OK Endar, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command for their amazing support. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Eric Eilerson. Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. Charles is at C. Henkel, and Wes is at Boss Wes. A special thank you goes out to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thank you to Corey, Charles, and Wes for potting with me tonight. Thanks to all of you in the chat for watching and all of you at home for listening. And as always, may the force be with you.